Okay, considering that we concluded the Gemara, which discusses the prohibition of eating on Yom Kippur and the various details therein, eating and drinking, I should say. So as has now become our custom, we'll now look at the Shulchan Aruch, Code of Jewish Law, written by the Alter Rebbe, founder of Chabad, Shneur Zaman of Liadi, where he discusses the laws of the prohibition of eating Yom Kippur and the minimum quantity for liability, as we can see on the title. So chapter 612 of Orach Chaim, the first section of the Shulchan Aruch. Simon Tafresh Beis, section 612, Shir Achila B'Yom Kippur V'Shir Kamasa Boy Tezayin Sifim. Now we'll discuss the laws of eating on Yom Kippur and the minimum requirement for liability, and in it we will have 16 sections. Aleph 1, Achila Ketzad. How does one violate, or how does one violate the prohibition against eating on Yom Kippur? One who eats the amount of food and the amount that would settle his mind from his hunger in that eating, Chayiv Kares is liable for excision. It's just Kares. Remember the verse reads, any person that shall not self-inflict pain upon himself via eating, as we learned in the Gemara, and the verse goes on to say, this person shall be excised, and therefore, if he eats enough to ease the pain of his hunger, then he's not inflicting pain upon himself, because he's just taking care of that by eating. And therefore, our sages have established that that it's a law accepted by Moshe Rabbeinu at Sinai, that this amount, like any other amount written in the Torah as we discussed, is like a large date. So let's look at footnote 7 there. So who pakas ma'akish kabetza, and this is a little bit smaller than an egg. So let's see. So if we look at, let's start with 6. In the original Kesef Sagasa, which is the Yoma, cited the Yoma that we learned, as to its current equivalent, Rabbi Chaim No, which is a famous Chabad halachic authority that lived in Yerushalayim, he wrote a running commentary on the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, making it practical on all kinds of levels, and to a large degree, many Chabad halachic rulings will rely on Rav Chaim No, and is most famously known outside of the world, if you will, of Chabad for a book called Shuri Torah, which is cited there at the end, where it discusses all of the measures that Torah requires. What's the size of an olive? What's the size of an egg? What's the size of a kasef? All of the different things he goes through in detail. So he's quite well known for that. So he writes, Rav Chaim No cites views ranging from 30 grams, which is the most stringent view, making it smallest, to 38 and even 48 grams. Okay, now let's go to footnote 7, which says, size of a large date, i.e. an egg without its shell. Right? Rav Chaim No defines this measure as 43 grams or 53.8 grams, depending on which extreme you're going to, mention in the previous footnote. Generally, 57.6 grams is given as the average weight of an egg, but that includes its shell. And therefore, if you can go a little less than a shell of an egg, a little bit less than the size of an egg, you see footnote 8, where there it says, whoops. Okay, the footnotes here are a little bit, the footnotes in the Hebrew are number off. Okay, so it's in footnote 7, yes. So there it says, yeah, 43 to 53 grams. That's it. So if the average egg then with its shell is 57.6, then probably go to the more higher one, which is the 53.8. But maybe we're more machmer, maybe we go more stringent just for practical purposes to be careful just in case. It's also a possibility. Okay. Now the Alter Rebbe continues, this measure shavu l'chol adam is equal for each person, ben l'nanas, whether he's a midget, ben l'ogmel l'chabashim, whether he's the tallest giant, like Og, the king of Bashan, fish kol adam, as we discussed in the Gemara at length, for every person. Kishiyirav when he's hungry, Tisashiv when he's like starving, not just hungry. His mind will get steadied when he eats this amount. When it comes to the giant, he'll be very mildly settled. But any other person, he'll be very settled. But nonetheless, his mind is set at ease with this food, with that amount of food, and thus culpable for having not inflicted pain upon himself, which is what the verse describes.
Why did they call him a giant? They made a bed for him that was 14 amos long.
That's pretty big.
But Moshe Rabbeinu was 15 amos long.
10 amos. Yeah, it's much bigger than that. But anyway, Moshe Rabbeinu was 10 anyway, not 14. Yeah, what does Madrasha mean? We don't know. But the bottom line is, the point here, as far as the context here, is that Og was a very big person, and even he, if he were to keep Yom Kippur, would only need the size of a large date to be liable, because that's what settles his mind. Any human. Okay. 2. All foods combined together to reach this number. But food and drink, he ate half the amount, and drank half the amount. Don't combine. He's going to discuss later in this very chapter what the actual measure says here in footnote 11. In subsection 12, we'll discuss the actual size for drink. But a point here he's raising it just to tell us that only foods combine to make this measure, but not food and drink. Why? Why? As we learned in the Gemara, because a person's mind is not settled. A person's hunger is settled by one measure, a person's thirst is settled by another, and the fact that he has half measure for eating and half measure for drinking, he's not settled in his mind for either of the two, and thus not culpable, not liable, right? Someone who eats vegetables in matzir shalav with the brine that's with it, as we discussed in the Gemara, because it's the sauce, that's the dressing. And likewise, someone who eats meat mamelach shalav with the salt on it, with its own condiments. The brine and the salt, they combine with the food you are eating to push one over the threshold of the minimum amount for culpability. Because any drink or anything that comes as a condiment and as part of the eating, is considered a food itself, even though it's technically a liquid. No, I'm still not convinced. Because this is a drink, this is a liquid that's there to augment a solid. A chicken soup is not there to augment a solid. The chicken soup is itself a soup. I'm still going to wait for what he says later. When he gets to the liquid issue, we'll see what he says. But at the moment, I'm not convinced yet. But we shall see. Gimel, 3. Shtei achilas mistarfas. Two eatings combined. Going, for example, she'achamat vehifsik. Person ate a little bit and then took a break. V'chazav achamat, and then continued to eat. Ach lahishim kashir, and all these times that he ate. Now, accumulative is above the threshold of the size of a large date. Mitzdarfim, they all combine. But how long? That is only if he ate the first bite and the last bite within the amount of time of eating a meal, which is, Perush just means chatzi kikar lechem, half a loaf of bread, which is discussed in the Gemara. I think it's size of 4 eggs, if not mistaken. If he waited more than that, they do not combine. Because a person's mind will not set at ease with that kind of eating. Now, it's interesting. Here, he sees it says 4. Yeah, that's the size of 4 eggs. But it's interesting to note that the combination of time is from the first food to the last food, which means if he ate a little, let's just say it's 9 minutes, right? Does he give the actual amount of time here? No, let's what I mean is like this. If he ate a quarter at the beginning of this amount of time, and then he ate a quarter at the end of that amount of time, those two don't combine, right? And then from that one to the next one was also within that amount of time, but between food number 3 and food number 1 was not. And that does not combine. All of what you're eating to combine to that amount has to be eaten, all of it within that time frame. Follow what I said? Right? So Meaning, it's not as if, because I continue eating, now the meal extends. Like, for example, when it comes to benching, when it comes to grace after meals, if I eat, and then before the time of a meal is over, which is, I think, 70 minutes or so, before the amount of time that it takes for my food to digest, I think it's roughly 70 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. It's the amount of time it takes for my food to digest. Then I continue eating. Then my meal has continued, and I can do grace after meals after that. But once I've taken another bite, now I extend another 70 minutes because now I have more time for my digestion. Right? The Rambam writes this. Shulchan Aruch writes this, that a person could wash in the morning and eat challah, eat bread all day, so long as between each time he hasn't went enough time to say your food is not digested. Right? But over here, it's not a question of, is the food still in my system? Over here, it's a question of, does all this food together settle the mind? And it only settles the mind if it's eaten within that time frame, which means from the first to the end, all of the food you are eating to reach this time frame has to be eaten within that time slot, not staggered over more time and say that the time extends because I continued eating. Follow what I'm saying? Okay, Gimel. Sorry, Daled. Shir achilas pras. What does this mean to eat the amount of time of a meal or half a loaf of bread? Yom Kippurim, about which we said in Yom Kippurim. And any of the prohibitions of Torah where, let's say, eating forbidden fats. Also, a person has to eat the size of an olive, and a person has to eat the size of an olive within the time frame of how long it would take to eat a proper meal. Whether these prohibitions are biblical, whether they are rabbinic, any of these prohibitions that have to be eaten within this time frame. Yesh those that say shukumay dalad beitzim, that it's the size of 4 eggs. Yesh others say shukumay gimel beitzim shoichakais, that they are like 3 big-sized eggs. Okay. Klemar meaning to say b'miloi uverevach, which means to measure it in its entire width and breadth. And not to be like, stuffing the egg into something smaller, just like, and you say, I got that size. Okay, so you have this machlekes. Is a size of 4 eggs or 3 eggs that would extend your time period. Only in halacha, and when it comes to matters of halacha, kol shebashal Torah, anything that's biblical, halach achar machmer, follow the more stringent one. So in the case of Yom Kippur, you would take the smaller measure, right? That would be more strict. Because we are saying we take the bigger measure, because we're saying even if you ate it more farther apart, you're still liable. So you would actually take the bigger measure, the 4 eggs. That makes it more stringent, right? Because it means even though you have to wait longer to eat your next bite before you're liable. Okay, whatever say from anything that is rabbinic law, halach achar mekel, you follow the more lenient view, which would be 3 eggs. Because that tells you that you have less time to eat, thus meaning you can eat more quickly without being liable. 5. Someone who eats an obnoxious eating. Going, for example, how do they translate it here? Overate grossly. Okay, obnoxious eating. Again, for example, like, for example, this is the example Rashi gave in the Gemara there. Did they put the source to Rashi? Doesn't say. The bottom line is he ate lots before Yom Kippur started, and then right when Yom Kippur started, he ate something. While he was still full, he did a double expression: satisfied and full, meaning he's completely full, stuffed to the brim. When Yom Kippur started, and the moment Yom Kippur starts, he eats something, and he has no pleasure whatsoever from this eating. And it's actually dangerous. He's stuffing himself more than necessary, more than his stomach can handle. Therefore, he is exempt from excision, even though, of course, it's forbidden. The verse reads with respect to this excision for someone who doesn't inflict pain upon himself in Yom Kippur. Now, that's only someone who doesn't inflict pain upon himself. That is to say, he's enjoying himself. But therefore, problematic, this excludes someone who's then damaging Gufoy himself, Bachila in that food, Shumuna, where he actually is inflicting pain upon himself. So even though he's in violation of eating on Yom Kippur, he hasn't satisfied the verse which says that only one who doesn't inflict pain upon himself is liable. This person did inflict pain upon himself by stuffing himself. So not liable, but forbidden. 6. The medvar mamorim, when does this apply? This only applies, is an interesting caveat, because it's a question of the experience of the person in terms of, is this food healthy or not? Is this food enjoyable or not? Therefore, it only counts when we talk about foods that it's not appropriate for someone to eat unless someone's hungry. Say a slice of bread. But if someone ate food that is appropriate even for someone who's full, like spiced and seasoned food, let's say like a cookie or something, or Danish, or some savory muffin, which is enjoyable even someone who's full, meaning you eat it not for the satisfaction it brings to your body, but to the taste it gives to your taste buds. Now, if that's the case, then even if you're completely full, you have enjoyment out of this food, and thus, chayiv, you are liable. It's a very interesting caveat. Even though he ate them when he's completely stuffed. Because the stomach always makes room for dessert, right? You know the expression? There's always room for dessert. So now you have a halachic reason, a halachic application to this rule that there's always room for dessert. Because even if a person is stuffed on Yom Kippur, but because this dessert is enjoyable to him, liable. Even though if you were to eat a slice of bread at that time, you would not be liable because that's actually damaging to him because he's overeating. Sorry? It's interesting. Well, you can't have it anyway. It's a question of liability. Anyway, but who in all this is shaloi achal harbe? Only if he did not eat a lot. Kol kach Yom Kippur, on Yom Kippur, ad sheyakutz b'chol minim mazon, to the point that he would be disgusted by eating more and just stuffing himself anyway. I'm sorry. This is only if he ate a proper meal before Yom Kippur, and the dessert is very enjoyable to him, even though if it were a slice of bread, it's not good. But if if he's completely, like stuffed to the brim, it's coming out already. Even if he ate some nice dessert, potter is still exempt because even then, it's not enjoyable, right? The ain't dovers that told the and therefore this is a subjective experience. What do I feel? Do I enjoy this overeating or not? So if I enjoy it, I'm liable. If I don't, and I'm just doing it because it's Yom Kippur and I want to prove some point, or I don't know, for some other reason, I don't know why the person would be doing this, but for whatever reason the person is doing it, then he's not liable. Okay. It's not discussed in the Gemara Yoma. No, that's what I'm saying. It's a very interesting caveat. So where does it come from? It's the Rosh. Where is it? The Kolboy and Levosh. So it's Rishonim and Achronim, not the Gemara itself. Lamed Ches is Kolboy again. 8 of them. Okay, that's just a statement from that. Bach mentions it, and the Magen Avraham. So it's later commentaries. It's true. It's not in the Gemara, but it's very interesting. But it's logical. I mean, it makes perfect sense, right? The Gemara, reason why the Gemara was telling us you're not liable, because the Torah says liability is for one who doesn't inflict pain upon himself, and that's why he's exempt when he's stuffing himself because he is inflicting pain, right? And the liability is only for someone who avoids inflicting pain. Now, if I'm enjoying it, if I'm eating a candy, then I am in violation of that command to inflict pain, right? So it would make sense. In other words, even the universal standard is not a universal standard that's pulled out of the hat. It's a universal standard based on the way a person reacts to food, right? So it still comes down to how I react when I eat. Is my mind settled? Do I enjoy it, not enjoy it, right? Okay. Hanas. This is not in Yoma either, but it's in the Gemara. It's in the Gemara. It says it's in time. No, sorry, it's in the Rush. Interesting. Okay, Hanas. Enjoying food and drink on Yom Kippur is forbidden, even if he doesn't eat it or drink it. So going, for example, a person who licks it and then spits it out. Chewing gum. Even something which isn't meant to be eaten. Someone who licks a spice, a clove. The eitz mosok, or some sweet tree like a sugar cane. Modern version would be a candy, I guess, or gum. Also, litim. It is forbidden. He's doing it because he wants to, bring moisture to his lips. wants to bring moisture to his mouth. He wants to bring back the saliva, right? He feels too dried out. The liflit, and then he's going to spit it out afterwards. Can't do that. As explained in chapter 567. They put in the footnote that this part of the Shulchan Aruch did not make it to us, unfortunately. Some parts of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch are missing. Okay, but it's permissible to smell all kinds of smells in Yom Kippur. Because smelling is not something that the body enjoys. It's something that the soul enjoys. It's a spiritual experience more than a physical experience. It's more abstract. It's not like you grow or you can, it's not like you grow or you heal a physical body when smelling. In fact, when they talk about smelling something to restore someone who fainted, it's to revive the neshama, so that the neshama reinvigorates the body rather than fixing the body itself. As opposed to food, which you ingest, the body itself processes that. I mean, obviously you have physical receptors in your nose that pick up the smell. But it doesn't change your body now that you've smelled something. Food does. Okay, therefore it's not forbidden in Yom Kippur. Not only is it permissible to smell things on Yom Kippur, it's a good thing to smell these spices to fulfill the obligation of having 100 brachas, right? Every day a person is obligated to make 100 blessings. Most days you get it anyway because you have 19 blessings times 3 from your 3 amidas, and you have the blessings in the morning, and then you have your meal, you have going to the bathroom, you have your snacks throughout the day, you have the brachas on Shema, you have brachas on the various mitzvahs you do, on your tefillin, on your talis. You basically get them covered every day without even knowing. Shabbos and Yom Tov is more difficult because you don't have 19 brachas per amidah. You have 7 brachas per amidah. You have an extra amidah because of musaf, but nonetheless, someone has to be a little bit more conscious of it. But on the other hand, you have kiddush, and you have at least one benching. Not on a regular day, not necessarily you're washing, eating bread, and having a full four brachas of benching. Shabbos you are for sure. So it's a little easier on Shabbos, but Yom Kippur is more difficult because there is no food. Now, on the other hand, you have 5 services, right? But your services don't have 19 brachas. They have 7. Rosh Hashanah has 9. So a way of making up the 100 brachas is to smell things. And you'll see people in Shul, they have it. They have their spices and they'll smell it to make sure that they have their 100 brachas. Okay. You can see more on that. David Seabag at our post-Shavuos Kinnis Torah, our Torah conference after Shavuos, David Seabag gave a little exposition on the history, importance, and significance of doing 100 brachas every day. And he talked about how you can take care of it on Yom Kippur and how to take care of it on Shabbos. He did all the calculations, breaking down exactly 100 brachas every day. So you can go check that out. It's on our YouTube channel. Okay. A person who ate food that is not fit for human consumption, even if he ate lots of it, way more than the amounts required for liability. One is exempt from excision, because again, it's a question of enjoyment. The pasuk only says one gets excision for one who does not inflict pain, and this person is inflicting pain by eating food that is inappropriate for his body. But, however, back in the old day, if we had a court that was capable of doing this kind of thing, we would give him lashes for misbehaving. Lashes for misbehaving is basically a lesser version of biblical lashes. Biblical lashes is much more strong, and it's got a certain kind of whip, and they have to measure your strength, and then they max out the amount that they can hit you based on your strength up until 39. But with Makas Mardis, it's much more lenient. Nonetheless, it's a point of disciplining the community. Okay.
She says she's wearing a panic. She was getting food ready for the cat.
And she ate it.
And she put her into a plate. And the phone rang, so she put the plate on the table. She came back from the telephone call.
It happens.
The food was gone.
Okay. Okay. All right. Tess. Achal ale kanim. A person ate leaves of sprouts. Potter is exempt. It's not for human consumption. It's not meant for humans. 10. This is the example we did have in the Gemara. A person ate buds of the vine, buds of a vine, like of a grapevine, that they've budded. Before Yom Kippur, Potter, they are exempt to eat b'amu because it's just a tree. This is interesting. Now, if they budded after Rosh Hashanah, so it's only less than 10 days old. This is not in the Gemara. Adayin himrakin, they're still considered soft b'yom kippurim because it's only 7-8 days old. And you could eat it. And it is fit for human consumption. And therefore, lefichach im achol b'yom kippurim chayav if you eat b'yom kippur is chayav. Where Brisa? I see it's the Brisa. Where's the Brisa? It's in Yoma. It's in Yoma that hasn't come up yet. Interesting. No. I'm sorry. Sorry? We didn't do 81B yet. Did we do 81B yet? No, we didn't. We didn't get to 81B yet. But here it says a Gemara. Okay, we didn't get there yet. Interesting. All right. Yes. Yeah. 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 Consequence? Is there any alternative consequence? I don't think so. Unless the rebellious lashes apply to that person, but it doesn't mention that in that case. It only mentions that in the case of someone who eats in a food that's not for human consumption. So is there another I don't know. I mean, obviously Hashem has his way of dealing with whomever, however he sees fit, obviously. But in terms of the court, or in terms of like legal liability, doesn't seem like it. Because it doesn't constitute food, eating. Sure. Which is why it's violation. Right? He doesn't even mention it, whether it's a violation of biblical or rabbinic. Doesn't mention that. So I wonder, is it even biblical? Where is it again? Which section is it? 7. We have to look up the Rush. I'm curious. I wonder if it's rabbinic or biblical. I'm very curious. Good question.
That would make a difference, right?
Sure, it makes a difference for the level of liability. Interesting. Good point. Okay, let's conclude with 11, and tomorrow we'll get to the drinking. Achal pilpilin yavation v'zangvil yavesh. A person who ate dried peppers or dried ginger. Pater is exempt because this is not appropriate for eating. Achal kasher tovin. If you ate them when they are wet or like they're pickled, like you have pickled. Sorry? Or maybe they're still fresh maybe they're dry and fresh. Maybe they're wet because they're still fresh. Eating them fresh is something that's a normal thing to eat. I thought it meant more like pickled ginger. People eat pickled ginger. You get it with sushi, right? But maybe this means, I guess you're right. Talking about it's moist while it's still, yeah. Let's see what the source is. It seems like it's the Gemara there. It's again, we're gonna have to see this when we get there. So this is the next section of the Gemara, which we haven't done yet. Sorry, what were we saying? Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. More like pickled peppers and pickled ginger. But it could be, Rabbi Gipple is right. It could be talking about just that it's still not dried out. And then like not dried out peppercorn is something that someone would eat, I guess. It's not so spicy yet because it's not dried out. I don't know. We'll have to see when we get to the Gemara there. Anyway, then it's appropriate for human consumption. Chayav, then he's liable. Okay, so tomorrow, God willing, we'll look at the second half of this chapter, which is drinking, and then we'll get back to the Gemara. Yeah, so the truth is that the next section of the Gemara, I didn't learn it, but I glanced at it, where there it talks about punishment and culpability in terms of like how many a person's culpable, once, twice. If a person eats 2 measures, is he culpable twice? Person eats and drink in 1 shot, is he culpable once or twice? That's going to be a discussion going forward. But I guess it also has bearing on this issue here of certain foods for which one will be culpable or not culpable based on whether or not they are fit for human consumption. Meaning, are you culpable like for 2 carbonas? Sorry? Okay, so the cardis twice can't happen, but if it's by accident, then a person would have to bring 2 carbonas, 2 sacrifices, right? Just like 2 sinful offerings, yeah. Yeah, if it were Shoigi accident. Okay, have a wonderful day, everybody, and we'll continue, God willing,